Hello and welcome back to Seaside Garage. I want to continue my Cabriolet project today. You should probably watch the previous video about this if you want to know what's wrong with it and so on. But what I want to do today is to change the Cambelt, the water pump, the oil and the coolant, and make sure that the coolant system is actually flowing, because there is a suspicion that this engine gets a little bit hot if the heater inside the car is not on. I'm not really sure it's a problem actually, but I need to make sure. So I need to flush the radiator, maybe clean it. It looks decent, so I don't think I need to change it, but I need to make sure that there is flow in that. And then I need to change the Cambelt, because according to what I can find out, the Cambelt is 10 years old, and that's a bit too, I don't really want to risk that. So I want to change that. The first thing I want to do is to get the car bit up in the air so I can drain the coolant. I really do not have any suspicion. Well, I do have a suspicion because it's overheating a little bit maybe. I haven't experienced it, but I'm just told that unless I have the heater on, the temperature will climb slowly. But I really don't have a suspicion that anything is wrong with the head gasket, even though they are known to blow head gasket, these cars. But that's with the K series engine, and this is a Honda engine. Before I start this job, I'm going to disconnect the battery, just to make sure that I don't short anything, accidentally start it or something like that. That would be a bad thing. Almost hit the bucket. I'm a bit surprised that the fluid is blue. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be red, but on the other hand, blue and red stuff in my local shop at least is exactly the same. But if you mix the old school blue stuff, which is meant for cast iron cylinder heads, with the red one, which are meant for aluminum, it will goo up and become it will become a jelly kind of substance. If that's the case, it will also obstruct the flow quite radically. I want to remove this and the hoses, and I want to get better access to the thermostat down here. So I want to remove this part, but I won't remove that before I got the engine on the top dead center, so I can get it back on the correct position and not 180 out by accident. I don't know if it's possible to put it on wrong, but I'm just not taking any chances with that. So what I want to do now is to remove the tire so I can get access to the lower pulley, and then I will start to remove all the stuff so I can actually access the Cambelt and the timing marks. So let's go ahead and do that. There we go, that gives me access to the lower pulley. Looks cleaner than I thought in there, that's nice. Remember, this car got quite a few kilometers on the clock, but it actually looks very decent. This one could be tough to get out, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and try straight away with the impact to see if I can get it off with that. I'm not sure I have a big chance to actually getting it off. But the skill impact has surprised me quite a few times before. It's no problem. I just love this thing. Now I can start working from the top. Just to give myself some better access, I'm going to remove the power steering pump and pull that off to the side. Now I can remove the belt for the power steering and the power steering pump itself. I hope to be able to pull it out. I should have just removed the entire bracket. I think that would have been a lot easier. Like this. Then I think I can just put it off to the side. There's the Cambelt. It doesn't look bad. I'm not even sure that this is true. I don't think this is 10 years old. Power grip, but it's supposed to be a Triscan according to this. So I think it has been changed. The thing is, I'm just not sure. And it's an interference engine, this. It's also very loose, this belt. I don't know if that's normal, but I can almost pull it off with my hands. I'm just going to change it to be safe and sure. If I'm going to sell this car, it's also a good thing to actually have some kind of service history on it. But at least I can say the Cambelt is changed, the oil is changed, and so on. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Next, what I want to do is to actually remove the valve cover, because I can lock the engine, as far as I know, in there. Unfortunately, I forgot to buy a new valve cover gasket. That can sometimes, when I take that off, it could be nice to change it, but well, yeah, that won't be possible at least. There we go. And that's going to be exciting to see. 300,000 kilometers on the clock, remember? Yeah. It is looking quite nice, considering the amount of kilometers. In here, there are holes right there, and right there for the inlet and the exhaust valve. And I can lock them using a right-sized drill bit or something like that into the actual cam when the engine is at top dead center. I just love to see stuff like that. So nice. I'm going to spin the engine until the marks line up at the bottom end. I really always liked Hondas, and I actually own quite a few of them. I don't think I have featured any on the channel actually, but one of the reasons is they are so neatly made. Of course, they are very reliable, very well put together, but another thing is just the serviceability and the design. For instance, we got some writing right there that points upwards with the writing up. When I turn the engine until those are up, like this, not only is that pointing up on both of them, the point right there, right across each other, and there are now holes that line up with the holes in the carrier for the camshaft. So I can drop a drill bit in that fits those, and then the cam is locked. It's just so neatly. It's so hard to misread the marks, and on many engines there's only one mark and it's very difficult to line up and so on. This is just so neatly made. I like it. There we go. I'm just going to go ahead and take off the timing cover down here. Maybe it's just me being too used to working on French. Where did that go? Maybe it's just me being used to working on French cars, but bolts coming out of an engine doesn't normally look like this in my universe. They're corroded and full of that white powder stuff. These are really nice. And then I should be able to remove the top part, or the lower part of the cover actually. There we go. So that reveals the timing mark, and you will be able to see it right there and up there. So the bottom pulley is lining up perfectly, but I'm going to undo the tensioner down there, and then I'm going to remove the belt. There we go. Cambelt is off. I can remove it completely before I remove the engine mount. But I'm actually going to abandon the Cambelt process for a bit, because I want to remove this, the distributor, now that the engine is locked and in position. This is marked with a scratch right there, which makes it possible to realign it. without having to set the timing. So I'm going to remove that. That makes it a lot easier to access the thermostat housing. I've actually decided to do this and check the thermostat before I start to pull apart the coolant system, because it actually looks very, 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 very clean, the coolant system and the coolant that came out of it. So the theory about maybe a clogged radiator is not very likely, in my opinion. But a stock thermostat, or a thermostat that is maybe a bit too hot running, could be a possibility. And remember, I don't even know if it's actually getting too hot. It could also be a false reading or a wrong reading. And then I can access the coolant hoses a lot easier. And that gives me access to the thermostat housing down there. Let's undo that. So far I liked everything about this engine when it comes to working on it. The thermostat housing location though, it's not really my cup of tea. First glance it looks okay, the thermostat. It doesn't look neglected, and again the system looks very clean in there. But I'm just going to take this into the kitchen and try to boil it and see if it actually opens, because maybe it's stuck. That would make sense, at least for me. And if that's the case, then this engine and coolant system is very healthy, because if I can keep it from overheating just by using the closed off system and the heater in the cabin, it's quite impressive. But let's see, I'm just going to boil this. Yeah, it is opening up. Okay, so I just tested the thermostat, and it is opening. Oops. And it is opening. I actually think, and it's just my theory, that the thermostat is faulty. It's just opening too late, and that will result in a pretty hot running engine. But I think the problem is that. So I'm going to wait and test the new thermostat against this thermostat, and hopefully I see a difference, and then I'm pretty sure I found the problem. So I'm going to abandon working on the coolant system until tomorrow, because I need a new thermostat. So I can continue on the Cambelt, of course. And the next thing I want to do is to support the engine from underneath, because I want to take off the engine mount. There we go. And then I can go ahead and undo that engine mount, because otherwise I can't get the belt off. Look at this, how clean it is. I just love working on Hondas. That's the engine mount off. And the belt. Woohoo! With the engine mount off and the belt, I can remove the tensioner down there completely. And then I can start focusing on the water pump, because I want to change that also. Oh, this is one of those days. So it turns out the water pump that I ordered is also the wrong one. The water pump is wrong, and the thermostat. The thermostat I can get locally, it will come tomorrow. The water pump will take 11 days if I order that one. The problem is that I ordered the parts using the correct information. I just double checked. It's just listed for the wrong one. I can kind of understand that the system get confused, because in '96 you could get this car with both the K series and the Honda engine 1.6, and you really quickly can get confused. I even got comments on this one telling me that this is a K series, but it's not. So luckily for me, I got the correct cam belt, so I can get that back on, and I got the thermostat coming tomorrow. But I'm just going to tighten up the balls again on the water pump, because it doesn't make sense to wait that long. And I'm almost completely certain that the slight overheat issue is because of the thermostat and nothing else. Everything is so clean and nice. And also looking at the water pump from the outside, I think it's pretty new, probably just a bit old, and it feels just fine. I'm not going to wait 11 days with this on the lift without being able to do anything else in here. So I'm going to leave the water pump in and only change the cam belt. And I think it will be perfectly fine, because worst case scenario, this water pump is 10 years old and got 40,000 kilometers on it. So that's not a lot. So I'm just going to tighten it up and leave it be. So back on track. I can remove the old idler pulley. Well, it's actually the tensioner. And the spring I'm going to reuse because I don't have another one. There we go. And then I can go ahead and fit the belt. So the belt is back in. What I want to do now is to loosen up the tensioner bolt. And then with the tension bolt loosened, I need to spin the engine 90 degrees counterclockwise. It's right around there. And then tighten up the tensioner bolt. Now I need my torque wrench, and I need that to go to 45 Newton meter. Ah, that's easier from below. Like that. And then I'm going to spin the engine counterclockwise again until the marks lines up once again. Down here at least. And hopefully they will do the same up top. There we go. Let's see if the marks are lining up. Up, up, and the locking key fits into the hole on both sides. And it is tighter than the old one that I could almost pull off without letting the tension go. So that's it. The new cam belt is installed. I'm just going to fit the mount and the covers and all that, and then continue on the coolant system tomorrow. So see you in a bit when all that is fitted, and it's another day and I got the correct thermostat. So it's the next day and I got a new thermostat for it, and I just checked them by throwing both of them into boiling water at a certain temperature and see which one opens first. And they open up at exactly the same point. All I know now is that the coolant system is very clean. There's good flow in the radiator. I checked by pouring water into it, and it's just fine. So I'm going to put everything back together and then see how it performs, because as mentioned, I haven't really experienced any kind of overheating problems. I was just told that it will slowly climb unless the heater is on. So I'm going to do some testing, and if it's actually a problem, then I will have to investigate, but I just don't really see any reason why there should be a problem. It could be the radiator fan, and actually it could also just be the sensor that is not showing the correct value or something like that. So now I'm just going to put everything back together, start it up, hopefully it runs with the new cam belt, and then drain the oil and change that, and then we should be good to go on the engine side of things, I hope. So now I'm going to fill the system. What? We got water in this one, or coolant in this one, so it's somewhat bleed already. There we go. There's also a bleed screw down here that I just want to open up. There we go. Now what I want to do is to just fit all the rest of the stuff, and then I should be ready to start it up. So see you in a bit. So here we are, everything's back together and the engine is heating up. I'm waiting on the radiator fan to kick in. Keeping a close eye on the thermostat, on the temperature of course. Unfortunately I forgot to hit record when I fired up the engine, but it fired up perfectly and it's running really nicely. It almost feels like it's running better than before, but unless the timing wasn't spot on before, it doesn't really make sense. But it's really smooth and nice. So yeah, sorry I didn't hit record, but so far it's a success. I just want that radiator to kick in to make sure that works. But it's not producing a whole lot of heat, just idling away right here. The temperature is slightly higher than what I would expect it to be, considering the lower radiator hose is not very hot. So I'm really inclined to believe that the temperature sensor is maybe a bit off, but it's nowhere near the red, so I'm not that worried. But I would like to feel this hose getting a bit hotter soon to make sure that there is actually flow going through. Yeah, it's getting hot now. That's brilliant. So I think the thermostat is just opened now, which just indicates that the sensor is showing a bit more than it probably is. I'm trying to keep track of temperature using this gauge and it's not alarming. So as you can see, the temperature is showing rather high, but it seems to stay there and it doesn't feel that hot out there. The hose doesn't feel that hot. The radiator is getting hot, but it's not kicking in the fan. So I guess this is probably normal reading. It's just the gauge that is off, or the sensor that is off, so I might end up trying to change that. The radiator is currently 70 degrees. 75 somewhere. The hose going into the engine is 60, 57. I just think it's the gauge that is reading very high. And also, if the engine was really hot, if I took this off, it would just start to boil. Nothing happens. The engine is running completely fine, I guess. You shouldn't do this, by the way, unless you really know what you can expect, because if it starts to boil, it will just be... But anyway, I think all is fine. It's just the sensor that is showing way too much. So I'm going to attempt to change that. As you can see, it's hot, the top one, but it's not that hot either. Next up, I'm going to change the oil. I just went ahead and removed the oil filter also, and that gives me access to the switch that turns on the fan on the radiator. Yeah, it's a bit weird that it's located on the block and not in the radiator, but that's the way Honda did it. And most of the stuff Honda does works fine, so I guess it's fine. Right up there with the green and yellow wire. I'm gonna unplug that. With that unplugged, I can short it, and that should start the fan. Let's see, with the ignition on. It's very difficult to work up here. Oh yeah, I think you can hear it. The fan is kicking in just fine. So the electrical part of the system works, the wires and so on. Of course, I can't be sure that the actual sensor up there is working. But honestly, I think it's working just fine. I just don't think it's getting hot enough to activate it. And I'm just gonna go with my gut feeling on this one. And don't get it too hot, of course. And get a new sensor for the interior switch or the interior gauge. And see if that changes things. Okay, so I took a chance and let it idle for a bit more. The fan just kicked in. Don't know if you can see it, but you can probably hear it. The fan kicked in with the gauge just on the red. That makes me pretty certain that it's the sensor for this one that's at fault, because it doesn't show any signs of overheating. And this thermostat and the switch that just switched off, by the way, in the engine for the fan, is also located in the engine. So, and also take a look at this when I switch it off and leave it in ignition. Take a look at how fast the needle drops. And normally an engine gets a little bit hotter when you switch it off. This one just drops so fast that I think it's a matter of just a few degrees between the middle point and the top point. So I'm almost certain that it's the sensor, and I just ordered a new one, so we're going to test if that makes any difference when it arrives. But yeah, I don't think there is any problems, to be honest. It's just a bit scary to do stuff like this, but I have really kept an eye on everything and made sure it didn't feel too hot. So yeah, new Cambelt, old water pump, looked fine. New oil filter, new thermostat, and new coolant. Now I think the engine should be good to go, but I do want to change the sensor for the temperature gauge inside, just so you don't have to worry so much about that. But I'm almost 100% certain that the error is that sensor, or the gauge itself in the instrument cluster, of course, because currently the gauge is reading in the red, and I can have my hand on the coolant hoses. It's hot, but it's not that hot. I can even have my hands on the engine block. So I think it's just fine. Thank you for watching. Don't forget you can support me. There's a link to my Patreon down below, and see you in the next one.